What if the reason your intentions don't stick isn't a lack of discipline, but a lack of emotional safety? In this first episode, we journey into the unseen foundation beneath every lasting change, your inner sanctuary. Stay with me till the end while I'll guide you through some practices that reconnect you with your body's own blueprint for safety and reveal why this new moon could be the most important one of the year and actually for the outcome of a 20-year journey. Hello and welcome. My name is Diana Rogerson, and this is part 1 of Rooted Rebirth, a 4-part journey aligned with the lunar cycle created to help you gently reconnect with your emotional truth, shift old patterns, and begin building a foundation of safety from the inside out. We begin here under the energy of the new moon in Cancer, the most tender, internal, and emotionally rooted moment of the lunar cycle. Cancer governs our need to belong, not just to a family and community, but to ourselves, to our feelings, to our needs, to our body. And this new moon is not just a pause, it's a beginning. This session is guided by the element of water, that primordial current of emotion, intuition, memory, and inner sanctuary. Water is the wisdom of the feminine in her root form, receptive, reflective, and ever moving. Water teaches us how to soften back into ourselves. But to understand why this point in the cycle is so powerful and crucially important, we need to briefly look back. In December 2020, 5 years ago, we experienced a rare conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius. This marked the beginning of a new 20-year cycle and the end of over 2 centuries of Earth sign dominance focused on materialism, hierarchy, and empire. That moment wasn't just a planetary event, it was a collective reset. But just prior to that, both Jupiter and Saturn moved through the final degrees of Capricorn. So the seeds of this new Aquarian era had their roots in Capricorn soil, meaning what was initiated in December 2020 would require structure, discipline, and integrity to fully mature. And over the past 5 years, we've all been undergoing a kind of dismantling of systems, identities, and stories that no longer reflect who we truly are. That entire year of 2020 was marked by the powerful compression of Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto in Capricorn, accompanied by the South Node in Sagittarius, signaling a deep dismantling of belief systems, hierarchies, and societal architectures. This was the year the world stopped. Systems buckled, certainties fractured, and many were forced inward. So the 2020 conjunction symbolized the end of a 200-year Earth cycle focused on materialism, empire, and accumulation, and the beginning of a new 20-year air cycle focused on decentralization, information, and consciousness. And it was also a global pause and karmic reset, dissolving external scaffolds to invite internal reckoning. On December 21st, 2020, at the winter solstice, Jupiter and Saturn came together at 0 degrees, 28 minutes of Aquarius, the first great conjunction in an air sign in over 200 years. But what matters most is not just the technical degree. It's what lives inside that moment. And when we speak of astrology, we're not just tracking planets. We're listening to living symbols, archetypal seeds that anchor epochs. And here I would like to bring in the Sabian symbols. Sabian symbols are a set of symbols downloaded by a medium, Elsie Wheeler, in the 1930s. They were later interpreted by Dane Rudyard and put together in a book. And based on the work that I've done a while back with James Burgess, I was introduced to the work that he has done to the Elven Star, which ties the Sabian symbol into a journey, into a path that we can walk. So I'd like to take you and to walk together this path of the Elven Star, that 1 degree, the correspondent of the 0 degrees, 28 minutes Aquarius gives us, and the lessons that come through this path. Because sometimes the greatest lessons come through our mythologies, through our archetypes and stories. So I would like to invite you on a story through symbolism. So keep an open mind, because insight and epiphanies have a way of sneaking in. Light bulb moments are sometimes veiled in metaphors. So we always round up the symbols. So 0 degrees, 28 minutes Aquarius, we round it up to 1 Aquarius. And its metaphor is an old adobe mission in California. And this is a place built with earth, by hand, over time, by a collective, with a purpose that was both sacred and survival driven. So this image invites us to ask, what values do we believe in enough to build with our lives? This wasn't a flash of innovation. It was legacy through devotion. A structure built not for comfort, but for coherence, for gathering, for community, for worship. And in that symbol lives the core teaching of a new Aquarian era. That group endeavor is sacred when it serves something enduring. That ceremony and survival are not separate. And that future must be built slowly, with our hands, from what matters most, not just for us, but for those we will never meet. And this conjunction wasn't just about progress. It was about planting the blueprint for structures of spiritual survival, initiated not by lone individuals, but by small groups, quietly weaving coherence in times of disarray. The old world was cracking, and into that fissure, into that crack, this symbol whispered, build what lasts, not what sells, not what scales, but what sanctifies. And so now, 5 years later, we are being asked, what has survived with us since 2020? What values have become undeniable, unshakable, and real? What are we building with them? Or are we just carrying them around, waiting for permission? Because you are the adobe. Your body is the mission. And your community is the collective builder. And this path, it is the slow labor of transmitting values that outlive your name, my name, our names. And so we begin with a structure, not a monument of ego, but a shelter for the spirit. Aquarian 1 is the foundation stone. Building structures of survival with your group. It calls forth the soul not as an isolated spark, but as a flame tended collectively. Not as a solo mission, but as an ancestral relay. This is the knowing that what survives us must be built together. And the Elven Star reminds us that to build anything that lasts, we must walk a path. So from Aquarius 1, we move to its means of expansion. Cancer 5. Anticipation of the irrefutable consequences of our imperfections. We cannot build lasting values if we refuse to look at the cracks in our foundations. True expansion begins not in perfection, but in humility. The quiet awareness that our impact echoes, whether we face it or not. To evolve, we must confront the emotional truth of our blind spots before time makes them visible to us. For over a decade, Pluto moved through Capricorn, the sign of institutions, hierarchies, and top-down structure. It was a time of deep, often painful exposure, revealing the cracks in the systems we once trusted. Governments, education, financial empires, social orders, even our own inner frameworks of success and authority. We watched as the illusion of permanence gave way to truth, that no structure built on suppression can last, that control without care will eventually collapse. And now, as Pluto has tipped his shadowed gaze towards Aquarius, we stand inside Cancer 5. Anticipation of the irrefutable consequences of our imperfections. This is not punishment. It's awareness. It's the emotional intelligence to recognize that what we refuse to feel, we will be forced to face. But here lies the gift. Having seen the failures of domination and ego-driven governance, we are being offered a path back to humility. Not shame, not regression, but a return to the softness that makes true strength possible. This is the Cancerian path, not to harden, but to heal. To let the inner child be heard, to let our mistakes become medicine, to root our sovereignty, not in separation, but in emotional truth. Because real sovereignty is not stoic. It is vulnerable presence. It is the quiet, undeniable power of someone who has faced themselves and still chooses to love. The end of Pluto in Capricorn has shown us what no longer works. And Cancer 5 now shows us the cost and the opening. The reckoning becomes the reckoning with love. And in that reckoning, we become builders of a new kind of power. Sovereignty that feels, leadership that listens, structures that hold, not suppress. This is where we begin again. And then we move to its preferred path, Sagittarius 9, engaging fully in training. Building sacred structures require discipline, not rigidity, but rhythm. Sagittarius 9 says, learn, stretch, embody. This is where value becomes action, where we take the wisdom of ideals and anchor them in skillful expression. The temple won't raise itself. Sagittarius 9 says, engage fully in training. Not once, not briefly, definitely not when it's convenient, but fully, repeatedly, devotionally, Because belief, real belief, it's not static. It is a discipline of remembering. So this degree challenges us to ask, where did your beliefs come from? Were they earned or inherited? Are they expensive or inherited cages dressed as culture? For over 5,000 years, we have lived inside mental constructs shaped by conquest, hierarchy, and separation. These constructs formed religions, nation states, laws, economies, and eventually the very fabric of identity. And so our minds were trained not to wonder, but to obey, not to remember, but to conform. But Sagittarius is the wanderer, the questioner, the pilgrim of the eternal flame. Sagittarius 9 invites us not just to believe, but to train your belief in the presence of truth. Truth that can still surprise you. What if your current beliefs are only placeholders for something larger, something older, something still veiled? This degree doesn't just ask us to stretch our minds. It demands that we stretch our maps. Because the maps that we've inherited can no longer carry the terrain we now walk. And true training requires three things: humility, the courage to say, I don't know yet; curiosity, the fire to ask, what else might be true; and endurance, the soul muscle to keep showing up for what cannot be mastered, only lived. This is not about discarding what we've learned. It's about testing it, refining it, seeing what remains when nothing is left but breath and presence. You do not have to know it all. You do not have to pretend certainty, because the veil is part of the design. What matters now is that you continue to walk, continue to ask, continue to train your faith to aim higher than what has been handed to you. And Sagittarius 9 reminds us the higher aim doesn't come from the heavens. It comes from the one who keeps rising. Not because they know the way, but because they've committed to remembering it. And that brings us to the challenge point. And that is Taurus 13. Improving our lot in life. Here we meet the great test. Can we allow materiality to become sacred again? Can we stop shaming our need for beauty, comfort, and stability and instead bless it? Taurus reminds us survival isn't enough. To last, our structures must nourish. They must elevate the experience of life, not just extend it. Taurus 13 speaks softly, but firmly. Improve your lot in life, it says. Not in greed, not in ambition, but in right relationship with beauty, with harmony, with form. Taurus is often misunderstood as simple comfort or surface pleasure. But this degree carries a much older intelligence. It is the remembrance of the feminine current of life. The quiet, persistent energy that shapes rather than dominates. That nourishes without performance, that builds not through urgency, but through coherence. This is the feminine that was buried, not lost, beneath 5,000 years of hyperstructure, conquest, and control. And yet, she never disappeared. She lived in the rhythms of tide and womb, in garden and song, in the small sacred gestures that culture forgot. Now, Taurus 13 reminds us to truly improve life is not to escape it. It is to root more deeply within it, to build in alignment with Earth space, not the clocks. This is the quiet rebellion, to reweave beauty and practicality, to know that form does not negate spirit, and that to shape a harmonious life is not vanity, it's ceremony. And here, Capricorn's wisdom arrives. The path of Taurus 13 is not all softness. It must meet Capricorn's discipline, because the feminine without structure drifts, and the masculine without flow calcifies. So the question becomes, can you let Capricorn hold the structure while Taurus fills it with life? Can we remember that the divine feminine is not opposite to building? She's the force that infuses structure with soul. The adobe of Aquarius 1 must be built, not just for survival, but with this Taurus 13 knowing that how we build matters, that form must fill, that our structures can be both useful and beautiful. This is not the rise of the feminine over masculine. It is the restoration of their union, where the masculine offers spine, the feminine breath, and together they weave living architecture. Taurus 13 says, improve your world, not by force, but by returning to the pulse of life. Let beauty be your blueprint. Let structure save the sacred. This is the path of embodied remembrance. And the earth is watching, waiting for what we will make next. And this brings us to the spiritual purpose of building the Adobe mission. And we reach Libra 18, accepting the consequences of our misdemeanors. Here lies the karmic thread. To build together, we must be willing to repair together, to own what we've broken, interpersonally, communally, historically, not for shame, but for restoration. Libra calls us to meet conflict with grace, to practice justice as intimacy. Libra 18 speaks in whispers most can't hear. It doesn't demand punishment. It doesn't seek perfection. It simply asks, will you own what you've done, even when it weighs less than a feather? This is the degree of Ma'at, not in name, but in frequency. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, Ma'at was not just a goddess. She was the law of rightness, the governing harmony behind all things. She was the feather by which your soul was measured after death. When one crossed into the hall of judgment, the heart of the deceased was placed on a scale opposite Mars' feather. If the heart was heavier, burdened by guilt, deception, or unresolved deeds, it would be devoured by Amit, the soul eater. But if it was light, because the person had lived with integrity, made amends, and stood in truth, the soul was granted passage into the eternal field of offerings. This is not mythology. It's a mirror. Because Libra 18 asks us now, are you willing to know yourself so honestly that you can feel the weight of your distortions before the universe has to balance them for you? This is not about guilt. It's about responsibility as refinement. It's about knowing when a word spoken from fear, or a boundary not held, or a silence maintained in the face of injustice left a weight inside your field, and choosing to clear it, not to earn grace, but because truth feels better. In Maat's world, spiritual maturity was not about dogma. It was about the lightness of your soul. The lightness that comes when you live cleanly, aligned with your inner knowing, courageous in correction, clear in cause and effect. Libra 18 is not harsh, it's elegant. It offers the rare beauty of self-honesty that frees you, not condemns you. And in our time now, this moment of collective rebalance, Maat rises again, not as fear, but as standard. A field of integrity that asks, can you account for your ripple? Can you name the places where you stepped out of coherence? Can you forgive yourself, correct your path, and return to center? Because the modern day Maat is not outside of you. It lives in your nervous system. It lives in your relationships. It lives in the part of you that exhales in relief when you finally stop pretending. This is not about being blameless. It's about being accountable. And in doing so, remembering. Your soul becomes lighter, not by escaping consequence, but by embracing the exquisite discipline of truth without self-abandonment. So take this moment to ask yourself, is there anything I need to acknowledge, however small, to walk a little lighter? Not because you must, but because you can. This is the path of Libra 18, the path of Maat, the path of those who make truth not just an idea, but a way of moving through the world. And on the path of the Elven Star, this brings us to the feedback loop. And this is Pisces 22. Follow a spiritual code. Every true structure is born from ethics, not ego. Pisces 22 is the hidden pattern, the sacred law that whispers, not everything that works is worth doing. Not everything that shines is real. This is the conscious of the builder, not imposed from outside, but sourced from within. Pisces 22 hums with an ancient rhythm. Follow a spiritual code. Not one imposed from books, not borrowed from dogma, but the code you came in with, the one sewn into your soul. This degree lives at the intersection of immersion and remembering. It asks us to live fully within the dream, to feel the taste of strawberries, the ache of the heartbreak, and the warmth of the breath on skin, and still remember we are not the dream. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Yes, but not as a bypass, not as a reminder to rise above the human, but as a call to honor the sacred within the human, to let the mundane become mythic, to see the sacred through the ordinary. Pisces 22 doesn't ask us to escape life. It asks us to infuse it. Remember the story from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, where a young boy visits a wise man to learn the secret of happiness. And the sage gives him a spoon with 2 drops of oil and says, "Walk through the palace, observe everything, but do not spill the oil." The boy returns the first time, spoon intact, but remembers nothing of the beauty around him. So off he goes again, this time soaking in every tapestry, every garden, every flower, every detail, but spills the oil. So finally, he walks once more, fully immersed in the beauty of the world around him, whilst never forgetting the oil in the spoon. This is the wisdom of Pisces 22. To walk with a spoon, to love, to laugh, fail, build, grieve, desire, and dissolve, and yet never forget what you carry. Not just that you carry spirit, but that everything you do, everything you are, is in service of that invisible drop. It's like the children's Easter egg run, dashing wildly through the field with a spoon in hand, both delighted in the play and careful not to drop the egg. This is not restraint. It's attunement. It is spiritual embodiment in motion. And the spiritual code? It's not etched in stone. It whispers, it pulses. It reveals itself in moments of resonance, alignment, grace. It says, don't forget who you are, and don't forget why you're here. Not to transcend the world, but to bless it by living it fully. So if you've been feeling lost, not lost in ego's sense of failure, but lost in the forgetting, Pisces 22 calls you back to the soul thread that holds it all together, back to knowing that this moment is the curriculum, that earth is the temple, that feeling is the prayer, and that you are still carrying the spoon. Which brings us to the evolutionary gateway, Leo 26. Developing certainty that life fulfills its promise of joy. And finally, the blessing. That everything we've built, from grief, from sweat, from devotion, was never just for survival. It was for joy. Not temporary pleasure, but soul level joy. The joy of knowing we lived aligned. The joy of seeing others thrive inside the temples we co-created. Aquarius 1 is not just about survival. It's about legacy through alignment. It's about building what matters because it matters together. There is a point on the path where striving dissolves, not because the work is done, but because you've remembered that joy isn't a reward. It's a birthright. Leo 26 is that point. It is the evolutionary gateway at the edge of the spiral. It doesn't say you've made it. It says, now live it. Leo 26 is not about chasing happiness. It's about designing your life from the frequency of enoughness. Not external perfection, not performance, but that still deep place inside that says, I am here. And that is enough. I belong to this moment and I will shape it in beauty. This is not passivity. It is the sovereign power of alignment. Because when you stop chasing what isn't yours, what is yours begins to arrive. Quietly, clearly, fully. Leo 26 carries the golden wisdom of the sun. The knowing that presence is the portal, that joy is not the product of doing more, but of being more truly yourself. And not the self that's been filtered, trained, projected, or shrunk, but the authentic majesty of your undiluted expression, the you that life whispered into form. When you align with that version of you, joy becomes the natural consequence of integrity. It becomes manifestation of the echo of embodiment. You don't manifest what you want. You magnetize what you are. And so Leo 26 asks, are you ready to believe that life wants to fulfill its promise? Not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped blocking it with someone else's blueprint. This is joy as devotion, joy as destiny, joy as the echo of presence meeting purpose. So let yourself create, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you're the very existence of creative intelligence in motion. Design a life that feels like you, that breathes like you, that walks at the pace of your nervous system and sings at the pitch of your soul. Let that be your cathedral. And from that place, life, quietly, without spectacle, fulfills its promise. Not all at once, but moment by radiate moment. So now, 5 years later, We are entering the opening square of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, a moment of tension between what was seeded and how it's now taking form. The square is not a crisis, it's a crossroads, a friction point between vision and the embodiment. And this moment asks, are you building the foundation that matches the truth of who you've become? Are your structures in alignment with your soul's architecture or with your old survival strategies? Are you acting from sovereignty or from subtle reactivity? Whereas 2020 broke things open, 2025 solidifies the path forward. But only if we're willing to commit emotionally to what we know intuitively is true. And this Cancer new moon that took place on the 25th of June, 2025, is therefore not just a personal emotional reset. It's the first emotional anchoring of that long arc that began in 2020. So how have we evolved in the last 5 years from external validation to inner attunement, from status structures to sovereign embodiment, from doing to be safe to being as a path of truth, from fear-based control to love-rooted alignment, from spectacle and performance to quiet coherence and relational healing? Many of us have transitioned from chasing a life that looks good on paper and choosing a life that feels safe in the body. And that shift, though invisible to the outer world, is revolutionary. Furthermore, this is a moment of tension, yes, but also of activation, a crossroads between the original vision of freedom and the embodied structures required to live it. And this new moon in Cancer, it invites us to root that vision emotionally, because no amount of ambition or awakening matters if your nervous system still doesn't feel safe to be who you are. So often we try to change our lives from the outside in. We set goals, affirmations, intentions, we plan new habits. But real sustainable change only happens when the nervous system feels safe enough to support it. If your body doesn't feel safe, it won't let you move forward. Not consistently and not sustainably. This is why the first session and the first step is called the inner sanctuary. Because the first step in any real transformation isn't force, it's foundation. And emotional safety is the foundation. Emotional safety isn't comfort. It's not perfection. It's not a constant calm. It's the internal knowing that whatever arises in me, I have the capacity to meet it. It's that feeling that I don't have to betray myself to stay connected to others, that I don't have to perform or pretend or disappear. And it often begins by looking back. What was I taught that safety looked like? When did I first learn that certain feelings weren't welcome? What did I have to hide to stay loved? These are not just reflections. They are keys. Because every pattern we're trying to outgrow today has its roots in a moment we felt unsafe to be ourselves. So this brings us to the last part of this session. a moment of grounding, and some practices designed to gently anchor us back into the body, into our truth, and in our emotional safety. And I will briefly go through five practices that are designed to do just this. Don't worry about remembering them. I have created a journal you can download. I will put the link below. But briefly, here they are. The first practice is somatic centering practice. Your hands on the heart or womb. And this is backed by the polyvagal theory and interoceptive research. When you place your hands on your heart or womb and you ask, what does my body want me to know about safety right now? And breathe slowly into the sensations, not the story, but the sensations that arise from your body to guide you. And why this works? Because this activates the ventral vagal system, calming the nervous system and enhancing the interoceptive awareness, that brain-body connection, which is critical to emotional regulation. The second practice is an inner mother meditation. And this is inspired by internal family systems and attachment repair. And here you visualize a mother archetype, wise, calm, nurturing. And you let her sit beside the younger part of you that feels unsure or afraid. And listen to what she says. Feel how she holds you. Why this works? Because visualization creates corrective emotional experiences, reshaping the internal attachment system. You're effectively repatterning what safety feels like internally. The third practice is called emotional labeling practice. And this is rooted in affect labeling research and mindfulness-based stress reduction. So ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And try to be specific. Instead of just saying sad, try disappointed, lonely, tender. And why this works? Because naming emotions activates the prefrontal regions and calms the amygdala, reducing the emotional reactivity. We do this a lot with children when we teach them to name the emotions they feel, because they don't come equipped with a vocabulary that names everything. So that helps them soothe their emotions. The fourth practice is safety statement rewiring, and this is based on CBT and self-compassion research. And this involves choosing or creating a simple mantra. It's safe for me to feel this. I don't need to disappear to be loved. And speak it gently aloud or write it down. And why this works? Because it interrupts the habitual scheme cycles and introduces a new self-soothing neural pathway. And the more we practice this, the more those pathways are strengthened. And a new pattern becomes the rule. The fifth and last practice I will mention here is the secure-based visualization, which is inspired by the attachment theory and EMDR resourcing. And this involves you closing your eyes and picture a place where you feel entirely at home. And imagine the sights, the smells, the taste, the atmosphere, the weather element, and anchor that image into the body. Use all of your senses in as many ways as you can. And why does that work? because it builds an internalized, secure base from which emotional exploration becomes safer and more grounded. And it's a place where you can return time and time again to feel safe and secure. So if you'd like to go deeper, I've created a lunar journey to accompany this series. Inside, you'll find all of these practices, prompts, somatic check-ins, and a space to create your own safety map using the tools we explore today. I'll put a link from where you can download it below this video, which will take you to my website to download it. And remember that this is the beginning of a new cycle. And it doesn't have to be loud, and it doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be true. So I hope that this symbolic pathway and journey has given you a new perspective to approach the changing times we're living, all the disruptions in the world. And I'll see you soon for part 2, which is all about the tension and the turn. And that will be where we meet the energy of fire and learn how to befriend resistance without losing ourselves. So, thank you for being here, and blessings to all of you. Thank you.